All right, welcome back to AI4 2021 Healthcare Summit. I hope you're having an amazing time. Our next session is titled Creating Value with AI for Healthcare Providers. Please join me in welcoming our speakers to the stage.
Thank you. Glad to be here. We are going to be doing a joint presentation today, and my co-speaker, co-presenter is Deepesh Chandra, the Chief Analytics Officer of Secours Mercy Health. My name is Prashant Natatajan. I'm the VP of Health and Life Sciences at H2O.ai Health. Thanks for joining us. Today's agenda, we will look at the current state of AI in healthcare. We will touch upon important imperatives to change. We will look at how we can generate value with AI, and then what will it take us to get there. There are some interesting dynamics that are happening today. If we take a look at the current state of healthcare technology and artificial intelligence in particular, 90% plus of executives and leaders believe that AI will improve the patient experience and, more importantly, provide solutions for the post-COVID world. At the same time, 94% of healthcare executives also agree that AI technology is the most reliable path towards equitable, accessible, and affordable healthcare. In 2019, barely about 50% of the hospitals had an AI strategy in place. In 2020, on the other hand, 90% do. And these trends within health systems and healthcare providers are also supported by significant and important changes that are happening overall. For example, recently, the US government CMS decided that they will pay doctors and reimburse physicians and health systems for the use of specific AI algorithms. In this case, for diabetic retinopathy and complications as a result of stroke. Additionally, work done outside of the United States in other continents, including Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, is also indicating very clearly that healthcare providers must invest more in AI post the pandemic. And this is going to result in new opportunities for clinicians, for administrators, operations leaders, people in the trenches, and most importantly, patients. Over to you, Deepesh.
Thanks, Prashant. I think if you consider some of the macro themes that are happening in healthcare that are influencing things that Prashant just highlighted as part of the shift in the strategy and the focus on AI, particularly in healthcare, there have been many trends that were part of the healthcare industry that is leading to that change. Part of it got accelerated because of COVID, but part of it has been in making for quite some time. One of the biggest driver for this type of a change has been just the financial headwinds that the healthcare industry has been seeing for quite some time. Some have been both short-term, some have long-term implication attached to it with reducing reimbursement, focus on value-based care, the growing cost of delivering healthcare, and many more. This has brought a lot of focus in terms of what it takes to deliver healthcare, looking at different services and the cost that goes into it. So there is a pretty important financial side of delivering healthcare. And rightly so, the time is ripe that AI can provide significant benefit when it comes to financial side of healthcare, and what are the opportunities that can help lower the cost of delivering healthcare to our communities. Along with that, there are few other trends that are shaping up this focus on use of AI. One of the biggest one is just this overall growing trend around patients and its digital twin in terms of a consumer. How do we think about patient as a whole? How do we think about their needs, when they are going to happen, at what time, what's the most optimal point of care and type of care that we need to provide with them. And while the medical practice is growing and best practices are getting better and better about the holistic care of the patient, assisted technology from AI and other digital technologies can further enhance that hyper personalization that we see in healthcare and expect from healthcare as well. There is also a growing trend that is focusing more on digitization and making the process in access of care to healthcare a lot more automated, use of AI again, and in terms of both augmented technology as well as in the form of providing assisted insight at the point of care. And how we can further shape that up is been, an ongoing dialogue in terms of how to introduce that within the clinical workflows and other patient workflows. Um, Also, from a macro theme, one of the biggest trend that both the policymaker as well as the industry leaders are trying to push for is collaboration across the different corners within healthcare. How can the information flow more seamlessly between the hospital systems to the payer organization, to the pharmaceutical companies, to the med devices companies, to the policymakers, and this broad healthcare ecosystem, how it can function and go hand in hand. It does start with exchange of information by in the right framework of privacy and security and compliance, but at the same time, how we can share this information, how we can provide different perspective from each side of healthcare in terms of making healthcare better for both our communities and also lower the cost of operation as well. How we can bring better therapies to the bedside faster. And some of those trends are going to further accelerate as we think about post-pandemic stages of reviewing what vaccines rollouts looks like, what the future set of challenges from this pandemic and many more would allow us to do that type of collaboration between different sides of healthcare. And that is another imperative that is bringing AI into the mix. And last but not least, as I touched on, just the broader sense of wellness and focus that is coming from everyone on not just healthcare in the acute healthcare setting, but wellness as a whole. We all are wearing more digital devices strapped to our bodies. We are measuring our healthcare and our well-being a lot more with a higher fidelity, and that is generating a lot of data. And of course, a huge opportunity for us to apply AI to not only solve, but also to get insight into how we can live better, how we can be healthier together. And some of these opportunities are no longer a 5-year, 10-year dream. They are happening today. And I will turn it to Prashant to talk about some of the specific areas where AI is actively being applied in healthcare.
Thank you, Deepesh. In order to address the imperatives for change that Deepesh just spoke about, it is important to identify and address how to generate value within the healthcare ecosystem, specifically the provider health system ecosystem. And if we take a look at it, essentially, the options for us to be able to generate value are plenty. So starting from the 6 o'clock position on the slide here, supply chain management remains one of the most significant parts of the provider landscape, where there is a tremendous opportunity, not just to apply the lessons learned from horizontal supply chain AI, but also importantly, taking a look at healthcare specifics, of which there are plenty, in order to be able to put that data to work. Looking at hospital and facility operations remains another huge opportunity for us. Looking at demand, looking at capacity, looking at various things such as admission and readmission, census, and there's a whole bunch of use cases around this where it becomes more important to use AI to best optimize the hospital facilities and also care sites. Patient 360 and engagement, to Deepesh's earlier point, is extremely important. If we think about the average patient, an average patient spends more time at home than in a hospital, even very sick ones. And so being able to track what happens with the patient, not just within the hospital setting, but also at home during activities of daily living, are going to be very important. Taking advantage of things like smartwatches, devices, home devices, implants, wearables, all of these start creating a rich data ecosystem, which makes it again possible to combine the data with EHR data and other data in order to be able to put AI to work. Moving on, care pathways optimization in coming up with best practices, population health and value-based care. And we will increasingly see more focus on this, not just in the United States, but around the globe, especially as this pandemic has shown. In order for us to treat individuals, sometimes there is a need to identify stratified populations and get down to the individual as much as we look at personalized medicine and personalized therapies. Managed care remains, again, a huge opportunity area. And one of the things that we touched upon in the previous slide was being able to take real world data, convert that into real world evidence, and use it to bring together a rich ecosystem that benefits patients and subjects through provider pharma convergence. Translational research and precision medicine are going to be very important in being able to connect genotypic data and phenotypic data and other data together and come up with unified integrated AI solutions that can help the humans of healthcare. Looking at all of this from the perspective of corporate finance and revenue cycle management ensures that health systems are able to maintain healthy balance sheets and, more importantly, are able to continue to do what they have to do in order to provide care. And last, but certainly not the least, is the fact that healthcare, being a specialized field, has a need for unique and specialized and, frankly, talent that takes time to develop. And being able to look at various ways to keep employees happy, to keep them engaged, in order that they can provide the best care in the true spirit of what we do in the domain is going to be important. Some representative solutions here, without going through each of these box by box, are in the care delivery space. For example, disease detection, prevention, and progression. Also, decision support systems on medical imaging and radiology. We already talked about population health, something that has become even more acute now as a result of what we are seeing with COVID-19, the need for engagement with patients, the need for population risk stratification, screening, and immunization being some very top of the mind initiatives at this time. Looking at strategic models in terms of feasibility, forecasting, scenario modeling, and new business models are important. We did touch upon talent management and finance already. Precision medicine, especially when combined with population health, are going to be two sides of the same coin. And being able to use AI to its fullest in order to be able to do that, not just for oncology diagnosis and novel therapies, but also from the perspective of clinical research, and also as a significant driver of chronic disease management, for example, diabetes and congestive heart failure, asthma, and so on and so forth, are already the next frontier of precision medicine. We cannot forget operational excellence, things such as document.ai, being able to manage medical referral documents, progress notes, etc. Managing our relationships with payers and hospital ward and bed operations are significant values that are available over there that AI can be put to work. And then, as we discussed previously, also on the supply chain side of the house. Now, the obvious question is going to be, well, all this is dandy. How do we put AI to work in healthcare? There are a few things that we can do. Rather than just looking backward and looking retrospectively at what happened, our focus is to be able to look forward. And was pointed out earlier, being able to bring automation, amplification, and augmentation to full force. Things such as classification, of normal versus abnormal findings, risk stratification, disease or tumor classification, being able to decide whether a specific prognosis is either a tumor or not a tumor is how we can put AI to work via classification. Memory-based learning looks at our ability to be able to identify patients like mine for a clinician and also address things around cost and quality and readmission risk. Computer vision is increasingly becoming more important, especially when you combine it with DICOM metadata, as well as with structured data, both within and outside the hospital, in terms of medical imaging, workflow management, and geospatial tracking. Time series forecasting on demand growth capacity is a significant opportunity. And for those of us who have been in healthcare for a long time, we know that a lot of healthcare data and a lot of the patient experience is frankly episodic in nature, which is why time series becomes almost fundamental to the uses of AI. Natural language processing provides us significant opportunities in terms of document summarization, medical coding, understanding clinical complexity on the clinical and administrative medical record side of the house, but also in other areas, for example, in contract management, HR, surveys, and so on and so forth. Clustering, being able to do various types of clustering, whether it's unsupervised, hierarchical, or fuzzy, can provide significant opportunities for us to look at population health management, revenue cycle management, supply chain, and also things such as comorbidities and risks. Finally, our goal is to be able to create recommendations through next best actions, matching patients with resources, comparing cohorts, and that's where recommender systems comes in. And finally, probability estimation. What is the chance of this claim being approved or denied? What is the most likely outcome of event X? And then what is going to happen? Do we need to admit a patient, or is there a chance that a patient is going to be readmitted? I will turn the floor back to Deepesh.
Thanks, Prashant. I think we all recognize there is a huge amount of untapped potential in healthcare in applying digital and analytics technologies to the data. I think one of the fundamental question comes back is, this is great. Why haven't we been doing this? And the answer there is that we have. A lot of organizations have been applying this for quite some time, some for even for last decade, and major progress has been made on this front. But I think one of the systematic challenge that comes in application of AI in an industry like healthcare is, how do you bring this to the scale? How do you bring this to a level where it is not happening as a innovation agenda happening somewhere in a garage, but it is happening as the industry is flowing through. It is part of the daily routine. It is part of the workflow, and it is constantly generating the value. And that is the level which other industry outside have significantly made good progress. If we look at e-commerce, if we look at banking, significant improvement in terms of application of AI has been done to fundamentally shift their business model. Healthcare will get there, but I think there are certain ingredients here that are going to be very important for us to get successful at delivering that level of scale. I think one and foremost being is making a tangible business case. In this particular case, a lot of time application of AI in delivering the value is always a bit of a bottoms up approach in a healthcare organization, meaning the like-minded, very innovative individuals are playing with the technology and delivering amazing output, amazing use cases, but leadership from the top sees these as much more of an innovation agenda, sees this as more of a micro success versus something which can be leveraged as a fundamental shift in their business model, can deliver a level of scale that moves the needle for them operationally, financially, clinically. And so that is an important part in the stress that we were making earlier about connecting AI to the value. Where the value is, that's the important part here. And with that leads to how the leadership within the healthcare ecosystem can actually anchor this from the top, make the organization feel the need of doing this at a scale. And so it is not happening on the outside. And given where the healthcare is and where as an industry we are in terms of maturity of applying this at a scale, how can we build our capability in order for us to sustain it? And like with most of the transformation, the talent, the technology, and the needed data in order for us to do it has to be brought together. And how do you build this in form of a muscle memory that you can carry it forward and apply it to many other sources of value within your healthcare ecosystem? And end of the day, what we have seen more and more happening is not making analytics as a team game in healthcare, where clinicians are on the same table as is informatics individuals, as is data scientist, as is data engineer. And the organization is actually creating this as a team sport where a cross-functional knowledge is actually coming together in order for you to drive it. And that's very important. It's important because analytics in some ways is a cross section of technology and the business knowledge and engineering skill set coming together. So how do you make that as a team sport? That's one big part of bringing analytics to scale. And lastly, I would say is analytics as a standalone is great, but if you're not bringing it into the workflow, if you're not delivering that last mile impact, if you're not influencing how the business is delivered today, all those efforts are somewhat wasted. So there has to be a feedback mechanism where AI is developed and very consciously deployed into a workflow. The organization as a whole goes through a change management, learns from it, informs the AI. And how do you create that feedback loop is very, very important. It is very important to my parting thoughts to all of you is how do you make it stick in an organization? How do you make the organization recognize the value of it is very, very important. And you do that by not only making the leadership recognize the importance of it, but also carried it forward to all the way to the front line where you are making the workflow more efficient, you're delivering better insight, and you're lowering the cost of the operation overall. And that's one way to make it stick and make the value of AI recognizable across your organization and in the industry. With that, I will turn over to Prashant to close.
Thank you, Deepesh. For those who are interested, here are some references of the facts and the data points that we used in this presentation, and would request you to check them out if you'd like to find more information on any of those. In summary and in conclusion, I would like to thank Deepesh Chandra for his time and his insights. It has been a pleasure and an honor to join him in this presentation. I would also like to thank the organizers of AI4 for giving us this platform to be able to share our thoughts in the shared interest of common good and health system and provider success. Thank you to the team at H2O.ai for sponsoring the event and for giving us this opportunity. And finally, thank you to you, dear audience. And we look forward to hearing from you. And if you have any questions or if you can share more information, you have contact information here, and we would love to hear from you. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prashant and Deepesh. That was amazing. And we really appreciate you sharing these insights with us. I know the audience is giving you a huge virtual round of applause. All right, for the audience, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. Along the way, make sure you accept your connection request and check out our amazing AI exhibits. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.